So I'd like to talk you through the candidate experience easyJet uses for hiring cabin crew. So easyJet collaborate with Aon in hiring cabin managers, pilots, and even some head office staff, but their highest volume role is cabin crew. And I also, just before we start, want to get the elephant out of the room. This was all implemented pre-corona, but the process I'm going to discuss is online, so this does work for selection then, now, and into the future. So cabin crew is a fascinating and appealing role. Cabin crew are responsible for looking after passengers, including looking after passenger safety, and are also very much the face of an airline. Good cabin crew need to be customer focused, of course, but they need to communicate well with both customers and colleagues. They also need to be resilient in difficult times while strictly following clear guidelines, standard operating procedures on many points. So all of this has to be done also while keeping a smile on their face. So it's a tough role for sure. When looking for cabin crew, easyJet are facing a demanding job market against lots of other well-known airlines. So they need a process that captures the attention and retains good candidates. And they knew there was an opportunity for improvement there. So, for example, they could see previously that they in the online assessment part of the process. So in this talk, I'm going to focus on the easyJet solution that was put in place for early screening, where the highest volumes were. So easyJet reached out to every one of their 62,000 applicants to ask about the process, with more than 3,000 responding. This helped give some key insights into what candidates liked and why they were dropping out of the process. It suggested the need for a process that engages candidates and inspires them to continue through the application, but also gives easyJet a powerful understanding of candidates' caliber. It needs to make sense, so candidates shouldn't be asking, why am I being asked this? And it needs to look modern and up to date, but also friendly and personal. So no matter how all singing and all dancing the process is, it needs to feel like easyJet, not a generic selection process. So the following factors were identified as essential to their cabin crew candidate journey. It needs to be multiple device, and it cannot advantage candidates using any particular device, whether that's mobile, tablet, laptop, desktop, etc. It has to be convenient. If we want to screen early in the process and too much is asked of candidates, the candidate will just look elsewhere. So the balance here is important. You want to collect information to understand the candidate, but not put them off the assessment itself. It needs to be a fair process, avoiding decisions being made along the lines of, well, this person doesn't seem like cabin crew. And as well as any kind of unconscious bias like this, best-in-class assessment also needs to be free of any kind of systematized bias as well. The candidate should feel like they're getting something back for their invested time and learning about their potential employer. It's not just a standard process, but something that is already starting to onboard them into the role. And it needs to be personal and authentic. It needs to be easyJet. So each of these factors alone is tough enough, but combining them into one process that also is powerful at assessing is a huge challenge. So prior to even applying, candidates are able to take a realistic job preview quiz. The 10 questions tell them the sorts of situations they may face and provide them with a little feedback on how they respond to each situation. Is it easyJet the way they're responding? They are then invited to apply properly. Already they've been given an understanding of what the role entails and whether they'll enjoy it and whether they can be successful there. And just to be clear about the RJP, no candidate is selected out by this. It's for their own insight, their own experience, rather than a specific selection tool. So for self-selection only. So after registering with the applicant tracking system Taleo and completing some basic information, easyJet candidates then have 3 custom-picked online assessments to work through. I will talk about each of these more in a moment, but each was picked to provide us with a different angle of insight into the candidate, but also to be fair, engaging, and predictive. And when candidates work through these, they are taken on a journey of sorts, which is, of course, very relevant to easyJet. But I'm going to talk about more of that journey in a moment. So following these online tests, successful candidates are interviewed and invited to an assessment centre that looks at their key competencies. And then after this, the strongest are offered roles. So I'm going to talk through the 3 individual assessments now: emotion, challenge, personality, and SJQ. But please be aware that we'll also show a full video in a few moments. So don't worry if you're struggling visualizing everything. The video is going to repeat some of my key points, but also show you what everything looks like when it's brought together to a single process. So candidates start with a short personality assessment. This helps gather insight into each candidate's likely behavior once they're in the role. and how they respond is compared to specific competencies needed in that cabin crew role, such as those described earlier: resilience, communication, teamwork, that sort of thing. The personality assessment is adaptive, and what this means is instead of repeating questions over and over, it focuses in on specific traits relevant to the individual. It adapts itself as they work through. This results in a questionnaire that's quicker and therefore more user-friendly. We've also statistically demonstrated links between this assessment and easyJet Assessment Centre performance, so we know this predicts performance later in the selection process. Often, easyJet cabin crew need to think ahead to plan out what to do and to do so efficiently and while under pressure. The second assessment, motion challenge, is the most testing of the three tests. It looks at ability in complex planning. So candidates need to move one circle or ball to another circle or hole on the grid. They need to do so quickly, that is in fewer moves. And if they're successful, they level up. If they're less successful, they kind of stick on the same difficulty. So motion challenge is part of the Aon gamified assessments suite, and it uses gamification principles to be engaging but not overwhelming. So an example of this is the leveling up I talked about just then. The gamification, what it does is it subtly rewards candidates with positive feedback rather than overwhelming them with loud noises, fast movement, bright colors, that sort of thing. It's gamified, but it's not a game. It's also short and enjoyable while giving insight to easyJet into the cognitive elements of the role. The situational judgment questionnaire, so that's the final assessment, is a popular volume assessment method that puts candidates in specific role-relevant situations and asks them about how they would respond based on a range of options. So, for example, a customer may be complaining about a delay that you don't have any information on. How do you respond? What about a customer arguing about correct change or a drunk customer causing trouble? Each response option is plausible and gives insight into what competencies the candidate is likely to show in that situation. So candidate responses are compared against existing successful cabin crew at easyJet, and this ensures that the candidate is doing things the easyJet way. And SJQs are also an excellent two-way assessment tool, like the RJP, in fact. Candidates are able to see what types of situations they will find themselves in and even start to form that psychological contract about how they will be expected to respond to such situations. So the successful candidate has consistently demonstrated that they will behave in a way that suits the easyJet culture. So just to revisit this slide, that was the three main online assessments: motion challenge, personality, and SJQ. Each is measuring something different. Each is short, engaging, and insightful. But there's a further twist in how we created an application process that is truly easyJet. The assessments are surrounded by a wrapper that helps guide candidates through the process naturally. So the animated wrapper, which we'll show off in a minute, guides candidates through a journey as if they were cabin crew, traveling to Gatwick and then flying aboard an easyJet plane, helping out colleagues and customers as they go. It features short 20 to 30-second animations linking the test together, so the candidate online assessment journey mirrors the role itself. This wrapper doesn't impact any of the proven assessments I just talked about. Instead, it links them together more naturally. It helps create smooth transitions between the different tests, as each test is then launched automatically after the video. After the final assessment, the plane lands and the candidate disembarks back at Gatwick Airport with their animated colleagues thanking them for a great flight and wishing them luck with their application. So all of this, as I say, is presented with friendly animation. I hope you'll agree, looking at the pictures, that they are very friendly, non-threatening, etc. As they're working through these, as they're watching these videos, there's minimum sound to distract, and of course the characters are diverse. So this keeps the process friendly and welcoming for all candidates, further supporting a fair recruitment process. The wrapper in no way replaces or distracts from the main tests. Instead, it creates a narrative that pushes candidates through the assessments and makes completion as smooth as possible. So I promised you didn't need to visualize too much. So now hopefully here's a video showing off the process.
Welcome to a short demonstration of easyJet's candidate journey for cabin crew. Aon built an engaging digital assessment process, as both employers and candidates want something that is relevant to the role, predicts performance, and is fun to complete too. As you can see, candidates click one button to start the assessment process. They then watch animated videos that replicate the check-in. Candidates are then invited to tell easyJet about themselves. easyJet selected assessments that are engaging and fun to complete so candidates don't drop out. They start their assessment journey by completing the Aon Personality Questionnaire, which allows easyJet to understand how candidates are likely to perform and behave in the role. The candidate journey can include assessments that look like they measure what they are meant to measure. Face validity and robust science-based psychometrics are essential. Next, there is another short video to introduce the candidates to the next assessment. Reflecting the easyJet experience, it shows cabin crew boarding the plane and invites candidates to tell us more about their ability to perform in the role. You, of course, pick the assessment you want to use from situational, personality, ability, or even video assessment with AI. We can then visualize the journey with introduction videos which you can supply, or we can get designed for you. The second assessment in the scenario is Aon's Gamified Motion Challenge Ability Test, which measures complex planning capability. Planning is a key skill required by cabin crew. This is followed by another video where the passengers have boarded the plane, the flight has taken off, and you are then invited to take the final assessment by one of the cabin crew on the flight who asks the candidate for advice in some situations. Our assessments can be integrated into your ATS if preferred, and we can provide candidates and hiring managers with feedback reports, which can even include interview questions if being used at another assessment stage. The final assessment measures how the candidate performs in relevant situations to the role of cabin crew. The candidate is presented with a scenario and 3 options. Once the candidate has completed all the assessments, the journey ends with the candidate leaving the plane with thank you and a good luck from easyJet. So why Aon? We use a modern, contemporary look and feel that is really engaging, rejecting the traditional staged visuals. But don't fall into the trap of making it a game. Tests are quick to complete. Our digital assessments can be completed on a mobile and are designed to be placed in an application process that reflects your company. Nothing engages applicants more than seeing what working with you will be like. Power your talent strategy with Aon's Assessment Solutions.
Brilliant, thank you. So that was the journey through the easyJet cabin crew assessment. So as you've heard a few times now, it's designed fully bespoke to provide the assessment experience candidates said they wanted. The wrapper doesn't damage the predictive power of the assessments, but provides a compelling journey through them. And in case you don't want to just take my word for it, here are a few early candidate quotes. As well as the specific candidate comments, we've also seen a 5% higher completion rate, making a significant difference to the pool of high-quality candidates to choose from. And the assessment process has also now been shortlisted for the Recruiter Awards 2020 for Best Candidate Experience. So we're looking forward to seeing the results there. So all in all, a distinctly easyJet assessment that is enjoyable for candidates while giving critical insight into likely success as a member of easyJet's cabin crew.